I got him out to school and I came back in the house. I never looked up in the sky to see how beautiful it was. I come in the house and the TV's on and I hear a plane has just hit the North Tower. And right away I stopped and I looked at that TV and I said a prayer. I said a prayer for the people in the building and I said a prayer for a firefighter, New York City firefighter and first responders. Because as a firefighter fighting a high-rise fire like that, one of us aren't coming back. And you know that walking into that building. You're looking at one of your brothers and saying, there's a good possibility one of us aren't coming back. And I went in to get into the shower, and all of a sudden I hear a second plane has just hit the South Tower. And the old saying that grown men don't cry went right out the window. Because I cried like a baby. Because now I knew I lost friends, and now I knew we were going to lose, I figured we'd lose hundreds of thousands of people. Because in the World Trade Center, you got 25,000 people working in each tower. 25 to 30,000 people in each tower. That's 60,000 people. You got the subway below that has over 150,000 people every single day. And then you have over 30, 40,000 people walking around the World Trade Center that come down to visit. So the amount of people, that possibility that would have been died would have been hundred thousands of people, I was thinking. Well, the first thing I think about is my two sons in school and my brothers down at the firehouse that I got to get down to the World Trade Center. So what I did is I called up the school and I said, my name is Chris Edwards. I'm a New York City firefighter. My two sons are at school. The North and South Tower have been attacked. I got to get down to my firehouse. I said, what are you doing for security? They said, the school is locked down. So at which time, I got in my car and I started driving down towards the firehouse. I knew I had to get down there. As I was driving down, I had a doctor's appointment that morning at 11 o'clock in Good Sam. See, what happened was I blew out my knee in 2000. I got operated on in September 2000, October 2000, December 2000, and March of 2001, two major reconstructive knee surgeries on my left knee to stay on the job. I can't describe to you the love of what it is to be a New York City firefighter. So what I did is on the way down, I stopped off and I got off really quick and I ran into the hospital. And there was 100 people waiting online to get into the hospital. I was wondering, I tried to figure out what was going on. So all of a sudden I went in, I seen the doctor, I seen the nurse, and I told her, listen, I'm a New York City fireman, I gotta get out of here. She says, the doctor wants to talk to you, Mr. Edwards. So the doctor came out of the office and he said to me, he said, Mr. Edwards, listen, I have if I can remember right, it was a brother, a friend, or a cousin that was a firefighter. And he said to me, could you please check and see if you know where he is? And I told him, okay, I have no idea what that man's name was that he told me. My mind was going over 100 miles an hour. I get back out into the parking lot, and that is over 300 people waiting online. And I go over to a woman, I said, what are you here for? She says, we're here to donate blood for the victims of the World Trade Center. It didn't dawn on me then. It didn't dawn on me. That people pulled their cars over, ran into hospitals and said, take my blood for the possible save a victim of a World Trade Center. I get back in my car and I start driving down. All bridges and tunnels through New York City are all closed down. The Tappan Zee Bridge is closed. So what happens is I'm on the road, I'm on the thruway, and all of a sudden I see an unmarked state trooper car. I show him my badge, he sees me and he says, let's go. Excuse me. I follow him down. We go over the Tappan Zee Bridge. And on that clear day, you could see where the World Trade Center was. And I see a billow of smoke coming from down in Lower Manhattan. And now I realize something that I never ever thought would happen, that the South Tower had just collapsed. And like I said before, the old saying, grown men don't cry, went right out the window. I cried my eyes out because now I knew we were going to lose hundreds of thousands of people, and I'm going to definitely lose a friend and a brother. As we got down over the Tappan Zee Bridge, there's a toll booth at the time. All the toll collectors were in toll booths, they were all crying. They waved us through. We went down to the Yonkers. There's another toll booth in Yonkers. Those toll collectors were crying. As we got down next to Bailey Avenue, it's exit 5 off of the Major Diggin. I got off, that state trooper kept going straight down. I waved to him and he beat this on. I got into my firehouse. There were fire companies from throughout the tri-state. There were volunteer firemen that came down, got their rigs together, and came down to help. There were companies from Long Island, Westchester, Jersey, all came to help. It didn't even dawn on me then. I came into the firehouse, and like I said, some of the biggest, strongest guys you'd ever want to meet, we all hugged and cried and tried to figure out who did this. And then the other thing is we wanted to find out about our friends. I made 3 phone calls that day. I got 1 call back. The other 2 brothers were Paul Tegmeyer and Dave Weiss. Both of them were killed on 9/11. They both worked with us. Jimmy Basile in the back. Jimmy and I worked with Paul. Jimmy and I worked with Dave. Dave was in Rescue 1. Paul was detailed over to Engine 4 in the South Street Seaport. On a detail, Paul was going into the company. He had to go to another firehouse to cover for somebody else. When the North Tower got hit, Paul didn't know what to do. He went back to the company. Paul never came back. He was a 40-year-old firefighter that got on a job very late. But his love for the job, he did 22 years as a Verizon lineman and then wanted to become a firefighter. His wife told him, Paul, it's a young man's job. He says, you don't understand the love it is to be a firefighter. Paul lost his life on 9/11 along with Dave Weiss and 343 other firefighters. And we have a family, Tilly right over here, she lost her dad from Rescue 1. So all of a sudden now we're in the firehouse trying to figure out what was going on. And all of a sudden at about time goes by at 6 o'clock at night, they say all New York City firefighters go home. The guys that are working in the morning, you got to come back. I'm on medical leave. I don't have to answer to nobody. I got 2 metal plates and 8 screws on my left knee. But I don't have to answer to anybody. So all of a sudden, some guys went home because they had to come back in the morning. Other guys stayed because we knew we had friends down there missing, now that the North and South Tower had collapsed. At about 8 o'clock at night, all of a sudden, 2 Rikers Island prison vans pull up in front of the firehouse. And we're all looking at it like, what the heck is going on? Rikers Island is one of the worst prisons in our country. Never mind our city. And all of a sudden, prisoners get out with jumpsuits. No ankle bracelets, no handcuffs. The COs get out with no weapons. They all come out, they open up the back of the truck, the back of the bus. And they start handing out half-baked chickens, mashed potatoes, bread, juice, salad. They came in and fed us. Rikers Island prisoners came in and fed us. All of a sudden, they set tables up in the firehouse. We all sit down and we're like, we don't know how to take it. They get back in the bus and they go back to Rikers Island, back to prison. And we go about eating our dinner, worried about our friends and the people down at the World Trade Center. At about 11 o'clock at night, there was a company, Engine 13 from Yonkers. They ended up coming up with mutual aid to help us out. Engine 13 gets a run. The dispatcher says, Engine 13, head down to the World Trade Center. And I'm like, wait a minute. We got all these brothers over here, New York City firefighters waiting. And they're sending a Yonkers company down. So I went over to the chief that was in the Yonkers company. I said, Chief, you mind if I jump on the rig with you? He goes, no, Chris, I need all the help I can get. Myself and 2 other guys from my company, Richie Chismonte and Johnny Cavanaugh, jump on the back of the rig with Yonkers. The city that never sleeps. You could hear a pin drop. As we drove closer and closer towards the World Trade Center, the white dust became thicker and thicker and thicker. We got down to a Broadway. There was a command center set up. There was a chief there that I knew. And I kept asking him, Chief, give us something to do. Give us something to do. And he says, Chris, I don't want you to have to strip a rig, take all the equipment off a rig. I want to wait and give you an opportunity to take over ladder 54 engine in the post office on the 3rd floor, throwing water on building number 7. So what ended up happening is we're sitting there, and while we're sitting there, we're looking around, and I see a shoe, a woman's shoe. And then I see a jacket. And then I see a briefcase. And I said to myself, I just hope to God that they made it. That they made it. Next thing you know, they switched chiefs, and now I'm lost. They brought in another chief to relieve him. I went over to the other chief. I said, listen, the other chief was going to give us a job to go and relieve 54 engine of the line. He goes, you know what, Chris? Go take the guys from Yonkers and go over to the post office and throw water on building number 7. So the guys from Yonkers and the 3 guys that myself and 2 other guys from my company walked out to the post office. We get into the post office. And as you get into the post office, like time froze. There was a half-eaten egg sandwich. There was a cup of coffee that people, mail spread all over the ground. People ran for their lives. Get up there, we start hitting pockets of fire in the building number 7. All of a sudden, as time went on, you started hearing a vibro alarm. A vibro alarm is what a New York City firefighter wears. That if you're not moving for more than 15 seconds, that vibro alarm goes off. The more I kept hearing that vibro alarm, I kept saying, those are the bodies of firefighters that are trapped. Or brothers that dropped their mask and ran for their lives. So after about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, I said to the chief from Yonkers, here's the radio, we got to go down and do a search. We walked out in front, next to the Millennium Hotel was to the left. Where the Trade Center stood was 210-story buildings, completely level. In the distance you could see the spear that was in the middle of the plaza. It looked like a tennis ball. That's how far off it was. What ended up happening was a line of over 300 or 400 yards going out to the middle of the hall. There was a chief in the street, and I said, Chief, what's going on? He said, Chris, we just pulled out a Port Authority cop alive. I go, you got somebody out alive? Now it's Wednesday morning, early in the morning, 8, 9 o'clock. I said, you got somebody out alive? He goes, yeah. We're working on getting we got another Port Authority cop. We're working on getting him out now. I said, Chief, how did they survive? Well, somebody said they slid down from the 83rd floor on a piece of concrete. And all of a sudden I had hope. A 4-letter word that I used down at the Trade Center. H-O-P-E, hope. That we find more people alive. I get over there, and I said to the chief, we got to get out there. He goes, how are you going to get out there? You got 2 metal plates and 8 screws in your name. I said, Chief, you retired 4 months ago, and you're in the street telling me I can't go out there? He says, okay, Chris, you're right. Take the Stokes and bring it out to the end of the hole. The Stokes is what we bring on. If somebody's injured, we put a body on it. So we go all the way out, 300 or 400 yards out to the end of the hole. And they're cutting out the Port Authority cop, John McLaughlin, which was trapped for over 22 hours. If you've ever seen Nicolas Cage's movie, 9/11, that's John McLaughlin. He also is an Orange County resident. And John came out and he survived. When John came out, I looked at him. I was standing over him. And he said, I want to go home and see my wife and kids. That's all he kept saying. And I said, brother, you're going home. You're going home. We lift John out, and they went 400 yards out to the Millennium Hotel where there was an ambulance waiting that took him away. At that point, I had so much H-O-P-E, hope. We find more people alive. John takes off in the ambulance. Now all of a sudden it was one of the most helpless feelings you could ever have in your life. What do you do next? 16 acres. 16 acres. You didn't know where to go next. So I started walking back. Started walking back to a firehouse on Duane Street. As I go by Duane Street, there's a New York City police officer comes over to me. And he has a shirt in his hand. He says, listen, I have something I want to give you. My son was 9 years old. On September 11th, yeah, he goes, yesterday, on 9/11, my son's class made T-shirts and wants me to give it to a New York City firefighter who's a hero. And I looked at him and I said, I can't take that shirt. He says, you have to take it. My son made it. I said, I can't take it. I'm not a hero. He says, what am I going to tell my son? I said, all the heroes are laying back down there in the pile. He gave me the shirt. I said, I'll take the shirt, but I'll never wear that shirt because I'm not a hero. That shirt's in a plastic bag in my house for 24 years. 24 years. I get over to the firehouse in the corner on Duane Street. My company's relocated from the Bronx. I get over there. I see two guys with video cameras following brothers coming out of the hole and guys coming into work. Everybody's crying and these guys are videotaping. At one point I looked at them and I got so mad. I thought it was a local guy doing video just for something for the internet. But it was actually the two French brothers that did a documentary on a probie that was out of school in June. His probie was in that firehouse. Those two French brothers did the documentary on 9/11. Thank God I didn't hit anybody because I would have probably ended up being on a perp walk on a video that they made. Those two brothers caught one of the most important parts of their video. They were inside the North and South Tower when it collapsed. They ran for their lives. In that video, when I first seen it, I see in the lobby Father Michael Judge praying, God, please make it stop. Please make it stop. As people fell from the building. He went out and blessed them. All of a sudden, I'm looking at the video, and I see the back of a firefighter. And he turns around, and it's my friend Dave Weiss. That was the last time I seen Dave alive. The one I called up from my firehouse was in the North Tower, and Dave didn't make it. Dave sacrificed his life. I ended up going back down. My company gets a call. You can imagine this, on Wednesday afternoon at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. My company gets a call for the South Tower. There's no buildings left. But somebody called in an odor of smoke. What I ended up doing was I ended up getting on the rig. My captain wasn't too happy. But he didn't know about it because he got in the front and I jumped in the back. As the rig stopped, down next to down on the West Side Highway near the South Tower, I got off. And he seen me. And he goes, Edwards, I told you to get back up to the Bronx. I said, Cap, I'm not going home. And I walked in from the West Side Highway, and on eye level was the 84th floor. 84th floor on eye level. I spent 2.5 weeks down at the World Trade Center in the pile. After 2.5 weeks, I was sitting on a piece of steel, taking a 5-minute break. And all of a sudden, I started crying. And I looked, seeing cranes, backhoes, dump trucks. And I had to leave. And I got up, I walked out of the pile. I went up to the firehouse, got my Class A uniforms, the one I'm wearing right now. I started going to funerals and memorial services throughout the tri-state.